you're not tied down to one thing and one career, and really understanding that you are not just a pharmacist.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Clinical Pharmacist podcast. My name's Ruhina, the CEO of Clinical Pharmacist Solutions, and I'm joined today by my co-host and our COO, Sarah Dekmak. In this series, we've been speaking to pharmacists who have taken alternative pathways in their careers, not by leaving pharmacy, but by using their skills in new ways and applying their clinical understanding beyond traditional practice. Today's episode explores another dimension of that, building a healthcare-informed brand. We're really pleased to be joined by Shikha Ramjutan, founder of Reset, a hair care brand powered by adaptogens and focused on scalp health and hair growth. Shikha is a pharmacist by background and created Reset after seeing firsthand the impact that hair loss and scalp conditions were having, particularly on young women. Her aim was to bridge the gap between clinical understanding and everyday self-care by combining evidence-based ingredients with traditional approaches to wellness. Alongside the brand, she's also built a growing online community around hair care, beauty, and wellness, helping to normalize conversations around hair loss and confidence. Shikha, thank you for joining us today. To start, it would be great to hear a little bit about your own pharmacy journey and what led you to create Reset.
Of course, thanks for having me, Ruhina and Sarah. Pleasure to be here. I think you summed it up perfectly in a little bit of intro. So I am a pharmacist. I actually moved from Mauritius to the UK, and I completed my pharm and my pre-reg here in the UK, so about 5 years here. And then eventually I moved back to Mauritius. So I had a very short stint as a pre-reg and a pharmacist, but I knew really early on, I think pretty much after my pharmacy career, that I didn't really want to go deep into the different pharmacy careers that were advertised to us. You know, how it's always you need to pick between pharma, hospital, community, or primary care. As much as I really enjoyed the patient side of things, I always felt like I wanted to do something else or something more. But I think it was really different for me because it felt like when you are in the world of pharmacy, that's all you really ever know. And so it can be quite scary to step outside of that. But eventually, with Reset, once I started it and took that leap, it really felt like the puzzle sort of fit into place for me. So I created Reset after a couple of years of working as a pharmacist in Mauritius. And yeah, it sort of took off from there. So I think I had about 3 years in between.
Amazing. And what kind of led you to hair care, scalp conditions, like beauty and wellness? Because I think a lot of pharmacists would love to kind of explore that area, but what was your motivation and what took you to that?
So when I thought of doing anything else, and I really was like a beauty lover, as you would say, I never thought about a career in it. But whenever I thought about doing something else, the obvious answer would be like, oh, you should do aesthetics. And a lot of people were doing it back then, training in all sorts of aesthetics, especially like dentists and nurses. And I kind of felt like it's still so overly reliant on developing a whole other skill set and doing another course. And I kind of just, I knew I didn't want to do pharmacy, but I didn't know what I wanted to do, which I think it's very common to be in that position. But so when I was working in Mauritius, I didn't love it because the career ladder over there is very different to the UK. So what I was taught in the UK was clinical pharmacy. And when I moved to Mauritius, it was pretty much do whatever you want because doctors are kings. We're not going to listen to you. And I really had trouble digesting that whilst working as a pharmacist over there. People didn't really want your advice. They were on their way to see their doctor if something was wrong. You were basically there to dispense medication. So it kind of ingrained it more into me that, yeah, this is definitely not what I want to do. So as a first step, I was like, okay, what is it that I actually enjoy about being a pharmacist? The answer was patient care, giving advice, helping people. So I was kind of like, let me take matters into my own hand and how can I help patients best being in this like toxic-ish environment for a pharmacist to be in. And I was like, you know what, education, they don't want to listen to me. I'm sure someone else wants to listen to my advice and with all the knowledge I've learned over the last 5 years. So I was like, I'm going to start an Instagram page and just post advice on like health, wellness. So I was doing stuff on like diabetes, minor ailments, colds, coughs, demystifying like common myths and all of that. I quickly amassed sort of little community on there. It was mainly like younger people, I think, who were interested in medication and interested in understanding conditions. So I realized that, okay, so I think the older people are quite set in their ways and they're not going to change. But the younger people are so motivated to learn about all these things. So I was like, okay, this could be something there. So I kept on doing like content that they asked for. And quickly I saw like the shift between like from health and wellness into like more wellness and beauty. So I started getting more and more questions about sort of supplements, about skincare, about acne, about all these like little conditions that people face, chronic skin conditions that they were probably, oh, I don't really want to like go all the way to a dermatologist about it, or they were too embarrassed to talk about it. And like they would send me quite a few questions being like, is this normal to have like acne on your butt? Like things like that. So I saw that there was people who wanted to learn a lot more, and there was a space in like the beauty side of things. So a lot of my content after a year was pretty much just beauty and wellness. And at the time, I was working in a pharmacy, and weirdly enough, like I think it's also a bit of a butterfly effect. They put me in a new pharmacy, but the pharmacy didn't have a medication license. So all that there was in the pharmacy was skincare, hair care, and wellness products. And that propelled me even more to learn about all these products that we are going to have to now sell. So as I was learning, I was putting it out in as part of Instagram posts. So I kind of became more of like an loose term expert, like into the entire thing. So people associated me with like skin and hair advice. And during that time, I noticed that I think it was around COVID time, actually, loads of people got the COVID injections. So some people got ill. It was around that time that people were sort of speaking out more about taking care of themselves more. There's a whole like wellness boom during that time anyway. But I got loads of questions on just like hair loss and hair fall. And weirdly enough, they weren't coming from men and they weren't coming from like older women. They were coming from like young women between the ages of like 20 all the way up to maybe like 40. And I was kind of like, what's going on? Like, you never really hear about like hair loss and thinning when it comes to sort of that age group. And then the more I like listened to people, I was like, okay, well, she's postpartum. Okay, well, she's got PCOS and hormonal problems. She's just got early on stage hair loss. It's genetics. She's got stress related hair loss. She's got nutritional deficiency hair loss. So it's kind of like, wow, like all these people are experiencing hair loss at such an early age. And when they were asking me, well, what can I take for it? My only answer, and the only answer we've ever been told is, well, minoxidil. But in reality, like they were like, oh, really? Like I'm 21. I don't really want to start minoxidil because there is side effects to it. You are going to have to start taking it for a longer period of time because if you stop, because the effect is so great that it's going to cause more hair loss. And there's like a purging period where you lose more hair. So we're kind of just like, they were health conscious. They were on that wellness trajectory and they didn't want anything medicated. And I found it really hard to recommend solutions to them. So I started giving loads of advice, and that was the easy part. I was like, okay, get your blood test done, like get to the root cause of it. And they're like, okay, but what else can I use to boost this? And I think that's where the whole concept and idea of reset started. I sort of took that and I was like, well, is there like something in here where I can create some sort of product? Like, what is the research saying? So I think for the next year, all I did was research into that problem. And luckily, I had built that community of people. So I did this massive survey with like 300 people between the ages of 20 and 40. And I was like, hey, what problem do you get the most with like skin and hair? And specifically hair. Do you suffer from hair loss? And did you know like it's normal to lose X amount of hair? Just like you're not getting people that are like, oh yeah, I lose hair. But you sort of get a deeper insight into the problems that people are actually facing, how it makes them feel, what have they tried before, what hasn't worked, if anything has worked, who you sort of like tag profiles to like what's worked for who. At the end of it all, I was like, okay, there is a gap for a product that is non-medicated, but still has evidence behind it. Because I don't expect everyone to sort of boil rice water every day and cool it and then drench their hair in it or like go boil rosemary oil. And that's a lot of what we were seeing on like TikTok and Instagram, so all those DIY sort of recipes, but they weren't really practical. So I took all that researched into new ingredients that were coming out, the research behind it, what sort of products people wanted, what were the reservations. They didn't want anything too oily, sticky, and all of that. So I think it was, yeah, a really heavy period of research. And eventually I moved back to the UK to get a manufacturer over here and spoke to more people over here. And yeah, and that's how Reset was born. It was kind of a ton of research and then a lot of sample iterations and a lot of development to really get the formula perfect. And then I think we launched in 2023, August of 2023, and the research has started in 2020. So it took about 3 years to get to where we were because we wanted to make sure that everything's being manufactured as per like GMP. It's being done in like a sterile environment, none of that making stuff in your kitchen and no preservatives sort of stuff. Like, it was a steep learning curve, but I wanted to make sure that it was done well and the right testing was done. And yeah, it was just a crazy journey on manufacturing from that point. But it got easier when you did it for the first time after. Yeah.
Wow, I feel like that's so inspirational. You've just amassed a massive set of skills and experience along the way, like from social media and marketing to formulations to having to find out about different manufacturers and learning about the different products yourself. So it sounds like it's been like an incredible journey with such a like amazing product as the outcome from it. Like it's truly inspirational.
Yeah, Shika, I mean, you've made it sound like it was just sort of ticking along nicely, but I'm sure there were sort of challenges along the way. I mean, for
Yeah.
anyone that's sort of considering to follow in a similar footsteps as you, like for a brand that they would like to create, I mean, are there any sort of like challenges that they might face? Was it sort of difficult to self-manage yourself as well?
Yeah.
To sort of get through that, because I think with all that research you needed to find the right places, to find the right information.
Yeah.
Some people might get demotivated and just forget it at that point, but
Yeah.
you kept going. I mean, what advice would you give, or what sort of challenges did you
Um,
face?
I face so many challenges. I think half of what building a business is challenges and like putting fires every single day. I did not come from a background of manufacturing product. All I ever knew was pharmacy, but I knew that I didn't want to do it. And I think what kept me going is sort of anchoring myself to that North Star and that goal of the problem that I'm trying to solve. Because I think when I started, I was obviously asking for a lot of advice, speaking to a lot of people, experts in the field. The more people you speak to, the more opinions you sort of get on it. And that can be quickly demotivating. I've had people tell me that I should, like go sell in hair salons and do this. And then I'm like, oh, well, I'm not really trying to do like styling products. Like that's been done. There are plenty of great styling products. There's a core problem I'm trying to solve. Or I was told, oh, maybe you should just do the postpartum market. And I was like, yeah, but it can help so many other people. I don't really want to niche myself down to it. So it's important to realize like what you're actually trying to solve so you can take bits of advice that come with you with a pinch of salt. And it's just understanding that it's such a huge learning curve and no one knows what they're doing and everyone started from a place where they don't know. I remember when I first tried to find a manufacturer. So I had gotten all this research and I was like, I need someone to like put it together like a chemist. And I just Googled like a bunch of manufacturers, beauty and cosmetics in the UK. And I just reached out to all of them. And I reached out to them without a proper email address. I think it was like a Hotmail address. Didn't have a proper signature at the bottom. I was just like, hey, I want to make these products. And no one answered me. Like I sent it out to 20 manufacturers and no one got back to me. I wonder why. But yeah, it's because people get, I think all these queries, manufacturers get these queries all the time about people wanting to start new products and new businesses, not having thought through what goes behind it. So they need to see that you've really thought this through. And I remember there was one particular manufacturer, which was like one of the top ones in the UK. And they were like, I think I emailed them and they didn't get back to me. I emailed them like 6 months later and they were like, oh, sorry, like we just can't take you on. And that was it. And I mean, fast forward till now, like I'm working with them and we're developing 4 new SKUs together. It's insane, like how far I've come with not even knowing like what a brief was. putting together a product brief, telling them what texture you want, what do you not want. I had to like pitch them my brand again, I think last year or the year before, in terms of where we started and what we want to do. And then based on all of that, they would see if they want to work with you and invest in you. But yeah, so it's such a huge learning curve. So like you said, people can get demotivated. So it's really, really important that you are passionate about it. Another thing is just be prepared to sit in discomfort of like starting a new business, because I think coming from a background or a career like pharmacy, it's quite structured. You know what to expect. You've learned it at uni, you've practiced it. But you are moving away from that structured career of you're going in, you know exactly what to do, you know your content, you work within your 9 to 5, and then you're free, you don't have to think about it. Nobody really teaches you the struggles of building a business and like the emotional strength that you need to like actually do it. Because as soon as you step into something like entrepreneurship and business, all that security goes out the window. You want to try and get away from your 9 to 5, but you're working 24/7. There is no playbook. It can be really filled with self-doubt and like uncertainty and financial risk. So you really, really need to love what you are doing to get you through these dark days. And you really need to be passionate about it. I think that's the one thing. Otherwise, with all these setbacks that I had, if I wasn't passionate about it, if I wasn't clear on what my mission was, I would have been like, oh, like, I am going to give up on that. So I think that's the biggest thing with going into the world of business.
Yeah, and I think that that's really important for people to hear, because I think everyone always sees the end product on Instagram or like social media, but they don't see the hard work that you actually put in to actually get to that end product. And I think you've taken two really challenging kind of environments, so beauty, wellness with clinical at the same time, and you've combined them. So it's made like an even bigger, challenging new field for you to explore. How have you found your clinical background has helped with this? So, for the pharmacists that are thinking about like developing products, what advice would you give to them? And how did that clinical background help
Mm.
you to think about formulation? How did it help you to think about this is the texture that I want, these are the active ingredients that I want?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Whenever you're thinking about creating anything, I think there are two aspects. There's the problem and the solution. And a lot of time, people don't spend enough time on the problem, then go straight into the solution. So I think with like pharmacists being in the environment that they're in, whether they're in community pharmacy or hospital pharmacy or whatever it is, they're actually in a really unique position to identify gaps in the market when it comes to healthcare or wellness, because they're actually in the front lines and they're speaking to people and they're communicating with like customers and clients and patients. So I would say for anyone who's looking to do anything different, the first thing is really about taking a problem-centered approach. Identify something that people are really struggling with, not just looking at what other pharmacists have done or what other businesses have done and trying to replicate the same thing or whatever it's going viral, because that's not going to last. Like Reset was born because I saw the struggles of young women and they didn't have what they needed on the market. And I spoke to loads of people about it. So I think really being obsessed with the problem is one thing, and use your environment of where you're currently at to dive deep into that problem. Do your research. So that's one thing, because they really are in a privileged position to do so because they're not working from home yet full time. So they actually are there to see all these things happening. And the second one, when it comes to developing something, I think your background in science does come in handy. Maybe not every single thing in pharmacy, but you do understand and comprehend things a lot faster than the average person who didn't have a science background would. So when I first started, I felt quite bad that I just spent 5 years of my life studying and practicing pharmacy. And I'm like, do I really want to steer away from that path? Like, that's my safe space. Like, I'm never going to use anything. I feel like I've just wasted so much time and money. It's crazy when you're battling that inside your head. But I think that's one of the reasons why people struggle to switch careers, especially when they come from something like medicine, going into something like business. I've just spent so much time honing in on that skill. But I think your background is your strength and your differentiator, not a constraint. I think that's one of the really big things. When I started, I may not have used my pharmacy skills straight away, but when it came to like research, for example. So when I was, okay, what ingredients are going to go in? So what ingredients do I need to see that they are blocking DHT pathways? So when I go on like PubMed and I'm doing all that research, I know what's peer reviewed. I know how to read these research papers to see if there are any holes in there. I know the difference between in vitro and in vivo. I know which studies are relevant and has weight to it versus what doesn't. So you can kind of put all of the sort of like nonsense research behind you. So then you know if anything's going viral, like, is there any like weight to that scientifically? And that became a big part of my brand, I think, being scientifically backed and having that scientific background. And then going further into it, thinking about like formulations, what formulations are better absorbed, which ones are more bioavailable, just all these things come into play. I think this is why I love research and development more than anything else, because I really comprehend and understand it. So if I could spend all my time just doing that, like that is the fun part, like just going into and testing formulations. So I think, yeah, I think use science, use your background in science as your forte, and don't be afraid to expand it. I think one of the other things that I've done is I've used like my knowledge in Western medicine and chemistry, but I've also expanded it to like touch on sort of the Ayurvedic systems and plant-based adaptogens and all of that. And then it sort of really comes together because you really stop looking at it as Western medicine versus alternative medicine. I think there's like a strength to both. And that's one thing I had to come out of after pharmacy, because you really, really just bang on about, you know, is there research on this? Is there research on this? And yes, there may be, but then a lot of plants that may not have the same caliber of research, because what is research for really? It's to be able to monetize it in a way and commercialize it. So really understanding the caveats that come with it and really understanding the strength of different studies and different sort of medication systems. And yeah, I think that's just a really good advantage to have when you are in the world of pharmacy and you have a scientific mind. You're just able to merge different things super easily.
So I feel like you are still using a lot of your pharmacy skills, which is amazing. Obviously, you've taken on your passion of like beauty and health and mixed them together, and you've created a brand that you are passionate for, basically. Aside from clinical, so in terms of like business skills and learning how to run a business, all the finance, marketing, all those little bits that come with a business, how did you learn those skills? Have you done any courses? Have you just had to sort of play it by ear and learn as you go along? Or is there anything that has helped you develop those?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is really just research. So, what I would say is how I came out of it was speaking to other founders that have done it and they are a stage ahead of you. Don't want to speak to someone who's like raised millions and everything, because they haven't probably had the same journey as you. So, speaking to someone who are in similar stages, just getting advice and cold outreach to people on LinkedIn who are in that space. So, I reached out to a lot of consultants and strategists to sort of figure out what comes first. Like, when do you do the branding side? Like, when do you do the manufacturing? Like, what do you need for a launch? You just speak to a lot of people. And then I found that, like, over the years, the amount of people who are actually willing to help have increased. So it is becoming easier to get advice. Like, people genuinely want to help. Like, it's not all doom and gloom out there where people know are gatekeeping everything. A lot of people want to help, and a lot of people are creating content about it. So it's about knowing where to look. I listen to a lot of business podcasts about startups. I subscribe to this newsletter, specifically in the beauty space, called Beauty Independent. So it's all about building independent beauty brands. And they talk about everything from what to consider when you're sourcing materials, what to consider when it comes to like taxes, just all these different like bits of knowledge coming in. And that really helped me understand and piece together the puzzles. And another thing that really helped me, so when I came into the UK, I joined an accelerator program. And there's a lot of these in the UK for basically people who are coming out of other careers and starting a business. And that really helps you go through the process. So that pushed me to create a pitch. And that means that I have to really dig into my problem solution, because I'm actively trying to convince someone else. They give you a lot of support when it comes to different sides of the business, from sales and marketing and accounting and the legal stuff. So I think doing something like that, especially when you have no idea where to start and you don't have a team or you don't have a co-founder, is incredibly helpful, because you've got all these experts along the way just filling your head with all these things. And whether you take it or not, it's completely up to you, but at least you have that knowledge to start from somewhere. And then, yeah, I think with time, you just make loads of mistakes and then figure it out.
It's been a running theme, hasn't it, Ruhina, that everyone that we've had on so far is saying they've spoken to other people or had mentors, as Ruhina mentioned, and that sort of helping each other is what is helping people rise up, and not gatekeeping, I feel like, was another
Yeah.
thing that we've spoken about. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the whole aim of this podcast series, for people to be able to see what others are doing, sharing that experience, helping others to get access to information that they may not necessarily have, or just have it as a starting point to their research and their pathway. So I think it's been useful to kind of learn from your experiences, Shika. So I've got another question for you. So when you develop a business, when you're starting to kind of find your feet, it's always difficult to start up. But what have you found as the biggest challenge? Would you say it was the startup? Would you say that it's developing the product? Would you say that it's then scaling and marketing the product? What have been like your personal biggest challenges in it?
Oh, wow. Yes to everything. So really, really tough. I think with the product side of things, that came a little bit more easily to me. And again, I think I can attribute that to my background in pharmacy and my background in science and just me really understanding what problem I'm trying to solve. So I think that was the easiest part, is like knowing what I need to put out there. The hard part is just relying on everyone else around you and trying to find the right people and the right partners and the right suppliers and working for the first time in their timeline. So I think the first time you go from A to Z in terms of product development and starting it up is always the toughest. Like, it took me 3 years because I had to figure out the sort of branding side of things. And there was so much you could go into. It's a whole career, right? Like branding. So it's like, how much do I actually need at the time being, for the time being? Do I need to pay someone like 10K for like branding? Is this going to psychologically create my brand when it comes to consumers? And I think it was a really hard balance to decide whether to stay scrappy or to invest into all these things that you see other brands doing. And I think I have learned the hard way that not everything that shines is gold. So sometimes you start somewhere and you're like, oh, that brand has done so much PR. I need to be doing that. And as someone who's bootstrapping their business, which means that you are putting your own money into it and you're not raising investment, I was like, okay, that's just a necessary part of what I have to do, because how else am I going to get like coverage and exposure? And I spent so much money and time trying to get PR without trying to establish my foundation that's like, get sales first and then using that money. So I think it's making these decisions without being blinded by what everyone is doing, and really reminding yourself that you are not in the same position as all these other businesses. I think a lot of times when I started, I was looking at what other people are doing as motivation, but it also quickly demotivates you because you're not sort of at their pace. Because what I'm doing is basically building a car and trying to drive it at the same time.
Yep.
Right. So it's really hard to make decision. I think decision making was one of the hardest things that I had really had to endure. And then the second one is just supplier relations is a really, really big one. I would say with anyone who's like doing any manufacturing, your supplier has to be the person you can really rely on, and the communication has to be really, really good, because we had a lot of issues with our suppliers and they delayed a lot of our launches. Communication was terrible, and that really stresses you out as like a business owner, because you're like, is this normal? Is this not? Like, you have nothing to compare it to. So I think finding the right people is the hardest thing, and making decisions that will actually move your business from like A to B instead of A to Z. Those were the two things I struggled with the most.
Okay. And any final bits of advice, any top tips for anyone that's kind of sitting on the fence, wondering what to do next? Anything that you can kind of advise them?
Yeah, so I remember when I was about to go into the world of business and creating my own thing, and I would listen to podcasts, and everyone's just, oh, just don't overthink it and just take the leap. And I found that really annoying. I was like, what do you mean take leave? There are so many considerations that you need to have. So it's definitely not about taking the leap. I think number one is having the confidence that being a pharmacist does not define you. It's just part of your journey. And you are capable of doing so much more in life. You can have 5 businesses if you really wanted to. You're not tied down to one thing and one career. And really understanding that, like, you are not just a pharmacist. You can be anything that you really want to. And the second is just doing a lot of research. And when I say research, it could be anything from the market, research on like people behaviors and trends and what's going on ingredients or whatever, but also research as like what it takes to build a business and put down a mind map. Like you need to have your finances in order. You need to have a brand name. You need to register for a trademark. So all these like building blocks of like building business, what do you need to have? And the third, I would say, is a bit of a financial plan, which can be really, really scary. But I think that's also one of the biggest barriers to people leaping out of pharmacy. So don't just leap out into it and have no plan whatsoever. So I started out by actually, I was locoming for CPS for a while. So that kept me going for a while as I was like in the early stages of building a business. So maybe slowly step out of the role that you're into and try and figure out like how much are things going to cost. A lot of times people think when they have an idea, I'm going to make this in the next 6 months. It is not going to happen in the next 6 months in the nicest way possible because there are so many things that can go wrong that you don't even know yet. So really building out a plan is to like financially, how long can I last if I did start this business and went all in today? Do I need to be full time with it? How much investment do I need? Do I want to put my own savings into it or do I want to raise money? And that's a whole other like beast in itself, like raising money. So I would say carefully planning it and assessing your risks is such an important part of it. You can't plan everything. And I think there is something about you need to be a bit naive almost to start a business, because if I look back on my journey and I saw every single thing that went wrong and I knew it, would I start the same business? Probably not. You'd be so put off by so many things that went wrong. But I got over every single hurdle at the end of it. It's like you don't really want to shine a light like I had like 1,000 steps. You just want to take it one step at a time. So yeah, I would say just think about the different steps practically. Having the idea is great. Having the passion is incredible, but having those building blocks and knowing exactly what it takes and how you're going to get there and having a plan, that is what's going to anchor you in times where you feel like, I don't even know what I'm doing. Nothing is going my way. This is taking longer than it should. So I think that really helps to anchor you because you manage your expectations going forward because it's not all glamorous when you start, but it is incredibly fulfilling.
Yeah, I think you've had such an incredible journey, and I'm glad that CPS could be like the tiniest part of it. And so it's really lovely to have seen that journey develop for you. I think what you've said is like such amazing advice. Anyone that's thinking about it needs to make sure that they financially plan. They need to have good organizational skills to have that research, that backing, that full understanding of what that roadmap essentially of what they do want to do. So before we wrap up, Shikha, if anyone wants to find out more about your brand or find out more about your kind of social media pages, where can they find you?
Yeah, so Instagram is our biggest page. It is called wearereset.co. That's the handle on Instagram. And then my pharmacy page is called The Medics Pharmacist. Have not changed that name since I created it like 8 years ago.
And it's still a great name.
But it's recognizable. So yeah.
Medics with an X, yeah?
Medics with an X.
So if anyone that wants to go and check out Shikha's pages, please do. I think there's something that you said earlier, Shikha, that stayed with me when you were building your brand and building that social media page. I think we live in a world where kind of information is everywhere. And the fact that it's so lovely that people were reaching out to you to get that advice about their conditions. I think, we can have AI, but sometimes that information coming from that expert, that informed person goes miles above that. So
adds credibility to it. So it's 100% such a differentiator if you're already in the world of pharmacy because you're already credible and you're already an expert. And yeah.
Brilliant. So Shikha, thank you so much for joining us today. I think that this conversation highlights a really important point. So pharmacists don't only contribute directly through patient consultations. Our training also gives us a deep understanding of health conditions, patient behaviors, unmet needs, and that knowledge can be used to create education and services and even products in this case that support people in their everyday lives. Your journey has shown how clinical knowledge can translate into entrepreneurship while still staying connected to healthcare, beauty, and wellness, as well as the well-being of people that are using your services. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to everyone that is listening. The aim of the podcast is to showcase the many ways that pharmacists are shaping healthcare, whether it is within traditional roles or building something that's entirely new alongside them. So thank you both, and we will see everyone in our next episode.